Okay. Can we go back and see what we got? 'Cause I got
We
to
don't
start
have
from the beginning
anything,
again.
huh?
Okay.
Well, look, guess what?
That's fine. Well, that was an audition. Not audition, a practice. Rehearsal. Okay, you want to set us up again?
You're on. I can hear us now.
Yeah, but give the background again about what I'm talking about, because we weren't streaming before, apparently.
Hi.
Hi.
One, I just want to say, give an honor to God
Ha!
for the fact that that wasn't broadcast because
Us bickering. Great.
anyway. So, how you doing? Penny Wrenn Media here. We're here at the crib at the Hermit Hangout, and we're on the back porch. I had just gone into Brian and said, "Baby, I have one more thing to ask." And after a series of three other things, and I said, I need one more thing from you. I just need you to sit on the patio with me today, and tell me, explain the Odyssey to me, and we need to do it online. He thought that just meant record it. I said, oh no, actually I want to stream. And so here we are, coffee in hand.
Yes.
And Brian is explaining to us the Odyssey, the story, because we want to see the Odyssey movie. I know something has to do with Helen of Troy, and that's about it. Brian, he's going to
Ancient
explain
Greeks,
it.
yeah.
He's going to give us the Uncle Brian summary.
Yes.
And good news is I've already asked some questions about things that were confusing me. So I get to shut up the whole time, which is better for him anyway, and probably for you. So Brian, what is the Odyssey?
Okay. So, the reason Penny has me explaining this is because once upon a time when I was in college, like 30 years ago, I picked up a second major in classics. So I have a little background in this, but this is all from memory. It won't be super detailed, but I'll tell you what I remember. Okay, so the Odyssey. What is the Odyssey, besides a current smash hit movie by Christopher Nolan?
Smash hit. It is a smash hit, too.
The Odyssey...
That we're going to go see.
The Odyssey is an epic poem that was written in the 9th or 8th century BC by a poet named Homer. Let's pick this apart a little bit. First, what makes it an epic poem? Well, first, it's long. If you look at a book translation of it, it's about 500 pages long. It's all written in verse in the original ancient Greek, archaic Greek. And it originally wouldn't have been written down. This is something that would have been passed down as an oral tradition by professional bards,
And a bard is a poet.
like a minstrel, it's a traveling poet. That this was their job, is they go from community to community telling these stories, and they'd be hosted often by the local nobility or whatever. This was entertainment. This is before we had movies, TVs, even theater hadn't been invented yet. Theater wasn't invented until a few hundred years later in classical Greece, which we'll talk about in a minute.
And they were memorized.
This was all by memory. This wasn't written down. And so, it was written down a few hundred years later in the form that we know now, but when stuff is passed down orally from person to person, it changes over the years. So we don't really know exactly what it originally looked like, or indeed even if there was a person named Homer who existed. Homer might have just been a tradition that they said, okay, well, it's like, what's the director that they put the name on the movies when people don't want to put their name on it? It's like that kind of thing. Or maybe. I mean, there might have been someone named Homer.
But Anon, you mean?
No, it's
okay.
It's like Walter Smitty or something.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, I forget the name. But the tradition is that these were written by Homer, and the two main ones that survive today are the Iliad and the Odyssey. There are others that supposedly existed that have not survived. We have references to them from other ancient authors, but we don't have any more than like snippets of the lines. This is true of a lot of the ancient authors, like a lot of the old Greek plays we know that the playwrights wrote other plays, but we don't have them. They're just the ones that happen to survive through. A lot of this stuff was suppressed by the early Christian church, but also ironically preserved. The stuff that did get preserved often got preserved in monasteries. And these monks who were reading Latin and Greek, they could read this stuff and they say, oh, these are kind of cool stories, and so they keep them around, but they wouldn't publicize it all that much. And then in the Renaissance, all this stuff was kind of rediscovered, right? Okay, but back to these epics. So both of the surviving Homeric epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, concern the Trojan War, which is a kind of mythologized account of possibly semi-historical events that happened in the Bronze Age. So this would have been even a few hundred years before Homer or the people they call Homer were writing. So there might be some dim recollections of things that actually happened, but also there's a ton of myth in it: gods, goddesses, monsters, witches, all that stuff. So it's not 100% historical. But before we get to the events of the Odyssey, which actually mostly take place right after the Trojan War, let's give a little background of what the Trojan War was supposed to have been about and why.
And who is the blank versus blank in
yeah,
the war.
and who are the main players, and how it sets up the Odyssey. So the Trojan War, according to the myths, was fought over Helen of Troy. You might remember her, the face that launched 1,000 ships. So how did she launch 1,000 ships? Well, she was abducted by or ran off with a prince from
Where is Troy? I don't take for granted
a city,
that we know what Troy
I'm
is.
about to say that, a city called Troy, which, was somewhere in what we now think of as Turkey. And there's a historical site called Hisarlik that they think was the historical Troy, which is in Turkey. And, but again, this was all myth. So, it was somewhere to the east of the Greeks, right?
Greeks and
Yes,
Greece. So
of
this
Greece,
is Turkey
yes.
and Greece.
And so, what happened was there, according to the myth, there was this city called Troy. The king was named Priam, and he had a son named Paris, one of several sons. And Paris was given the honor of judging a contest between three goddesses. It was between Athena, the goddess of war and wisdom, Hera, who was the queen of the gods and the god of motherhood, and Aphrodite, who was the goddess of love.
So they're Greek.
Yes, these are Greek goddesses. And they were having an argument about who was the most beautiful. This is not necessarily like a feminist tale here, right? And so they were arguing about this, and no one could come to a conclusion. So they said, we're going to find a third party to judge this for us. So they chose this guy Paris. Now, the gods and goddesses in Greek mythology, they were not good people. They were always conniving, and they were always doing, So they all decided they were going to cheat, and they all tried to bribe him with different things, power, money. But eventually, the bribe that he decided to take was from the goddess. He judged the winner, Aphrodite. Now, Aphrodite's the goddess of love, and she promised him. Oops, something's happening here.
Yeah, I just want this.
Okay.
I want to put this up so that people can understand geographically
Okay.
what you're talking about.
So she promised him the hand of the most beautiful woman in the world. And the most beautiful woman in the world, according to the myth, was Helen of Troy. Helen of Troy wasn't always Helen of Troy. She wasn't from Troy. She was actually the daughter. She was a demigod herself, and
she lived in Greece.
and she was married to a man named Menelaus. Now, Menelaus was the king of Sparta. So
Sparta is in Greece.
Sparta is in Greece.
Okay.
Most people know Sparta. Yeah, we are
I don't
Sparta.
think. Oh yeah, but people don't know geographically what
yeah.
we're talking about, because
So-
really we're talking about
Yeah.
Troy is in Turkey,
Yeah.
and the goddesses are in Greece. So when
I
we
mean,
say
the gods and goddesses are wherever they want to be.
but when we say
Yeah.
the war, we're
Yeah.
essentially talking
The
about
war's
a war
happening in
between
Turkey.
and is it
Well,
is
we'll
it
get to that in a second.
Okay, perfect, got it. Thank
so
you.
so Menelaus is pretty pissed. His wife just got stolen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ran off with Paris back to Troy.
Mm-hmm.
Menelaus happens to be the brother of the most powerful city-state in Greece at the time, a place called Mycenae.
Mm-hmm.
The brother's name is Agamemnon. Agamemnon's actually married to Clytemnestra, who is the sister of Helen of Troy.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all keeping it in the family. Agamemnon says, "Yeah, sure, I'll help get her back." And as a matter of fact, all of these other city-states in Greece, they owe me some favors, so we're getting all of Greece. We're getting a bunch of ships together. We're going to Troy, and we're getting Helen back.
Mm-hmm.
So they sail for Troy, and they lay siege to the city of Troy, which is a walled city. So it turns out the war is not so easy. Goes on for a long time, 10 years, and there are all these battles, a lot of heroic deeds, the gods get involved. Part of these stories make up the epic of the Iliad. So the Iliad takes place during the Trojan War.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, the Odyssey takes place at the end and following the Trojan War. So one of these Greek kings that Menelaus rounded up to take place in this invasion was a guy named Odysseus. So Odysseus was the king of a city-state called Ithaca. Incidentally, the same name as the city of where I went to college.
Mm-hmm.
It's named after, I went to college in Ithaca, New York. It's named after Ithaca, Greece. So Odysseus wasn't known as the bravest or strongest, but he was the craftiest. He was the most cunning of the Greek heroes slash generals slash kings who invaded Troy. Like I said, this war has gone on for 10 years. It's a stalemate. Odysseus eventually says, I know how we're going to end this war. We're not going to beat them by force. We're going to beat them by trickery. So one day, Trojans wake up and they look out over the walls of the city, over the beach, and they see all the Greek ships are gone. And they see there's this big wooden horse standing there. This wooden horse is what we call the Trojan horse. I'm sure you've heard of that. It wasn't just a statue, it was also hollow. Trojans didn't know this. In fact, the Greeks left someone to tell them, we've given up. This is a peace offering, offering to the gods. So, the Trojans are convinced to honor the gods, we got to bring this thing into the city. So they bring it through the gate, park it in the town square, and then go to sleep. It's nighttime. At nighttime, the Greeks open up their little trap door on the bottom of the horse, come out and slaughter everyone. That's the end of the war. They destroy Troy. They sack Troy. Okay, war's finally over. It's been 10 years. Long war. And so, they divide up the plunder and
Plunder. That word. Spoils of war.
all of the Greeks, and that includes people too. They were enslaving people. And they said, okay, we're heading back to our kingdoms. Now, most of them make it back pretty quickly. Odysseus doesn't. This is where the Odyssey picks up. So the Odyssey follows the next 10 years of Odysseus's life.
So it's 10 years after 10
Yes.
years.
So it's of him trying to get back home to Ithaca. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Ithaca while he's gone. So he had left behind his devoted wife, Queen Penelope, and an infant son named Telemachus. The 10 years have passed by. Okay, he's been gone a long time. Then, all the other kings, they end up getting back pretty quickly. They sail right home. Odysseus doesn't show up. He's missing. So you've got a single woman in charge of a Greek city-state, which, culturally that wasn't going to fly. She had to be married. You also had a bunch of, princes from surrounding areas that were thinking, I can become king of Ithaca by marrying, I can run the city-state now by marrying the widow, presumably widowed queen. So they all start showing up at her palace, and they're just hanging out there until she chooses one of them. They're eating up, all the food, and they're, sleeping in the palace. They're sleeping with the servant women. And Penelope says, number one, I think Odysseus is still alive. Number two, I don't want to marry one of these jerks. And so the thing is, Penelope's cunning too. So
Penelope is cunning,
like her husband Odysseus.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that.
So she said. So she comes up with her own ruse. This is how I am not going to marry one of these suitors. She extracts a promise from them that she won't. None of them will. They'll all agree not to marry her until she has been able to weave a funeral shroud for her aged father, who doesn't have a lot of time left. Now, weaving back then was, it was very labor intensive. It took a lot of time, but she decided she was going to make sure that it took a real long time. So what she would do is, during the day, she would work on the shroud. Then at night, when everyone was asleep, she'd pull it back apart.
Just for the record, that was literally the clarification that I was asking for earlier when you told me I was being argumentative. Go ahead.
Anytime you say "for the record," that's like the sign of the argumentative.
That's not argumentative.
Okay. Anyway,
that's capturing it. That's the sign of you being insecure about my thoughts and thinking that's being argumentative.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Anyway, so over the course of the story, we're flashing back and forth between what's going on back in Ithaca with Penelope and what's going on with Odysseus and his crew. So, Odysseus, the thing about his crew is they have a real knack for getting the gods angry. And so, very early in the story, they're almost home. And then they end up all the way back in Troy for a few times. Now, I don't want to spoil the movie too much, but they go through a bunch of different adventures. At one point, they anger the sun god, and then they anger the wind god, and they keep getting blown off course. And
is it retribution for anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's because they're they keep angering the gods. Like with the sun god, they arrive at the island of the sun god, and he has a herd of cattle, and they eat the cattle. Right?
So is this at all a hallmark to the cunning behavior that led him to do the Trojan horse thing? Are we supposed to connect that to his character?
There's an ambivalence toward him, because he's not your run-of-the-mill hero in Greek mythology. Most of the run-of-the-mill, most of the heroes in Greek, Hercules, people like that, they do their deeds through strength and manliness and fortitude and
not supernatural power.
Yeah. So in the Iliad, let's go back to the Iliad. The Iliad is mostly about a hero named Achilles, right? And so Achilles is the strongest and most powerful of the Greek heroes. And then at one point he gets in a duel with the greatest of the Trojan heroes, a guy named Hector, and he kills Hector. And so Hector had earlier on killed Achilles' boyfriend, right? They're all gay, they're all bi, right? This was normal back then. And, a guy named Patroclus. And so So Achilles is vengeful, and he ties the body of Hector, who's Paris's brother, but he's the prince of Troy, behind his chariot and drags him in the dust around Troy. And there's the idea that this is wrong, what he's doing. Like, he's being petty and vengeful. And eventually the king of Troy disguises himself and shows up in the Greek camp, goes to Achilles' tent and begs him for his son's body back. And Achilles relents and gives it back. He's like, yes, what I did was wrong. And so, the heroic aspect of him is that, like, he recognizes what is wrong and right behavior for a hero. And this is like, Odysseus just tricks you, right? He's always tricking people. And, so there's kind of like an undercurrent that's like karmic undercurrent to what happens to him, right?
To Odysseus.
To Odysseus, yeah.
Because it's not a happy ending, I'm assuming.
Yes and no, right? So I don't want to spoil too much about the movie, but like, the thing is, Odysseus along the way, he has affairs. He ends up like living with these different women for a while, but also all this horrible, like his entire crew ends up dying, right? Loses, gets everyone killed. And eventually finally makes it back to Ithaca, like washed up on the shore, not recognized. And so like the end of the epic is, how does he get his kingdom back and like take revenge?
Take revenge
on these suitors that are trying to get his wife.
But why does he need revenge? Because she hasn't married anyone.
But they've eaten up his food and his wealth and like been living in his palace.
And he still wants revenge after all of the suffering and everything he's lost and done?
And so, he enlists his son, and they I won't tell you how, because this is probably a big part of the movie. I haven't actually seen the movie yet, but like
obviously we're going together.
They formulate a plan to take revenge on the suitors.
That's so stupid.
And they managed to get rid of them. I won't tell you how.
But please tell me they're destroyed, or something happens to them.
Well, so in the end of the book, and I've heard it's different in the movie, in the reviews I've read. So, but
the reviews are good?
The reviews are good, but they changed the ending.
Oh, okay.
I've heard. So, like at first, 20 years has passed. His wife isn't even really sure it's him, right? And so there's like this whole scene where they, are kind of feeling each other out. And then, in the epic, eventually, like it's settled that he's still alive, but then, the gods basically are like, you have to go back and go, you have to go out and go on a further quest, which is how like the epic ends. And his son is in charge of the city, but Odysseus has to go back out and kind of atone for all the shit that he did during the the course of the events in the epic. Now, like I said, I heard the movie is different, and they try to some of the criticism that I've seen from like classic scholars is that they say that Christopher Nolan is trying too hard to kind of like shoehorn what's essentially a mythic story into actual history.
History like of the United States?
No,
or
history of the Bronze Age, and like and their problem is they're like, well, you show all this mythological stuff, so why are you trying to make it more historical? Why can't it just be a myth? But like I said, I haven't seen it yet. I don't know exactly what happens. But yeah, I'm interested to see the take on it.
So am I.
Yeah.
What can you tell me? What significance or what themes does Penelope hold or represent?
Well, she's the devoted wife, but there's also the theme that she is kind of the counterpart in cunning to her husband, and that they're well matched. And the devoted wife one is important because you remember earlier I talked about Clytemnestra, right? So Clytemnestra, while Menelaus was gone, had an affair with a man named, I believe, Egyptus. Anyway, and so she is living at the palace. This is Agamemnon's wife with her lover, shacked up. And Agamemnon, the great general, gets back, and she murders him. Yeah. And it's interesting because Oedipus, and if you've ever heard of like the Oedipus stories, and so these are all supposed to be like these are kind of descendants of them, right? And a lot of it is like atonement for this sin, playing out over the generations of Clytemnestra murdering her husband, right, in a bathtub.
Wait, atonement for the
it's like this cycle of vengeance and atonement.
Sure, but Clytemnestra's in this generational version, right? So what's the previous generational version that she's atoning? Who's atoning for
her?
what?
So she gets murdered by her son because her son is obliged to avenge his father, right? But then he gets exiled. And it's just like there's these whole series of interconnected myths. And
does he have to murder his mother at a certain time, like when he becomes a certain age, or does that revenge happen like quickly?
He just does it when he can, but yeah, like a lot of the Greek all of these stories, everyone would have known all these stories.
Yeah. And
they're kind of recapitulated in different plays and myths, and they're different versions of them, and they don't always turn out exactly the same way. Yeah.
Sure. So let me ask you this. That brother Paul. And when you're reading the letters of Paul, you hear a lot about Greek, Jew, or Roman, And what inspired this is a brief Ezra Klein episode. It's like a 20-minute episode where he's talking about the Odyssey, having just seen it, and he's connecting it to some Judeo-Christian themes. And I'm curious to know I know that this is BC, for example, but what might have Paul made of these stories, presuming that he would have known of in terms of the Christian espousing that he was doing at the time?
I mean, not so much the Christian, I think, but in terms of the Jewish traditions.
Yeah.
So you remember, at the time of Jesus, people don't tend to know this, but the Jews had only been monotheistic for like 200 or 300 years at this point.
Yeah.
So they were Hebrews, but they were polytheists, right?
When you say Hebrews with air quotes, what does that mean?
Because, I think, this idea that we have that the Jews or the Hebrews were like this coherent culture, that's kind of retrospective because they really weren't at the time. Like there were all kinds of people. You look at the events of the Bible, like, well, the Hebrews were against the Philistines and this and this and this.
Are you saying that the Hebrews weren't an actual group? Like we've named them that after the fact to make sense of we've named a group of people that, or that's a name that we attach to different groups of people?
I'm just saying that in Canaan, in the the Holy Land, it was city-states just like in ancient Greece, right? I mean, just similar to ancient Greece. And they all had their own gods, and they all had different variations, and they had a pantheon.
Does Hebrew just mean from Canaan? The word Hebrew.
I'm not sure exactly what the word Hebrew comes from. I know like Israel is he who fought with God or whatever, right? But
is that what Israel means? He who fought with God?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Well, because
stiff-necked generation.
Jacob, who's Israel, the man Israel, same guy, right? He wrestled with God, right?
Oh, but wait a second. What's the Bible say something about a stiff-necked people? That's in. Isn't that around the same time I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
But he's like, I will call your people Israel, right?
Yes.
After he who he literally wrestled God, right? Because there's the stranger, and it turns out it's God, and he wrestles with him, right? Which is interesting because there are similar stories in Greek mythology of like people wrestling with gods, but this was all part of this Greek kind of like religious and mythological, or not Greek, Mediterranean mythological tradition and religious tradition, and so there was like overlap, and you get stories like the Hebrew Bible and Greek mythology both have a flood story, and so does Gilgamesh, and so there's stuff that was passed around, and the Greeks had, they had Samson, and sometimes you'll see some of the ancient writers will be like, well, Samson is the Greek version of, the Hebrew version of Hercules, right? And so there were people, they were aware of these similarities, and they'd often just be like, well, Osiris is Egyptian Zeus, or whatever, or Yahweh is Jupiter, and prior to monotheism, it was only when they become monotheists where they're just like, no, there's one God and none of these other ones are real, right? Prior to that, they kind of were just like, well, maybe there are more than one God, and they're kind of the same, these are just different versions of the same person, or the same hero, same God, same hero. So, so I think that that someone like Paul, yes, he was coming from. Was Paul the one that who was the centurion prior to becoming the apostle? Was that Paul? Or was that Peter? Paul.
I think it was Paul. Let me see. The road to Damascus, Paul.
Yeah. Or is he the tax assessor? Anyway, these were people that were working for the Roman Empire, so they were familiar with all this stuff, right? And so he would have known all these myths, right? Now, in terms of Christianity, my idea.
No, Paul was not the centurion.
Was he the tax collector?
The centurion whose servant Jesus healed, the centurion of the crucifixion.
Not that one.
Was
different
Paul,
centurion? Was Paul a Roman soldier?
He was a soldier. I thought though.
Centurion, soldier, Roman soldier.
I thought he was a Roman. I thought he was a soldier.
Yeah, that's what a centurion is a soldier.
Former soldier. He was something. What happened on the road to Damascus then?
Well, that's when he had his revelation.
I know,
right?
but wasn't he in? I thought he was in his official capacity. Paul, before becoming a Christian, was a Pharisee who was highly educated.
Oh, he was the Pharisee.
In Jewish law. Got it.
Okay.
But a Pharisee is an ethnicity or dialect or something, right?
They were a class of priests. Yeah, it's all coming back now.
Oh, he was a priest?
Yeah.
Oh, a Pharisee is. It's so interesting.
Cornelius. Anyway,
it's so interesting that. No, so not exactly. A Pharisee was not the same as a priest. The main groups were priests, descendants of Aaron, who served in the temple in Jerusalem. Pharisee, a Jewish religious movement made up largely of teachers, scholars, and lay leaders devoted to interpreting and teaching the law. Some Pharisees may also have been priests,
Matthew
but being a
was the tax
Pharisee,
collector.
yeah, I thought that was what you were talking about. But being a Pharisee did not make someone a priest. Sadducees, another influential Jewish group closely associated with the so these are just the elites. Pharisees are just elites. So Sadducees and Pharisees were two groups of elite people. Two groups of elites are Pharisees and Sadducees.
Sadducees, yeah. Okay. Anyway,
good. I'm glad that you asked that because I that changes. Got it. Well, wait. Can I answer it? So, Are these just two groups of elite? No. Yes, with one important clarification. The Pharisees and Sadducees were two of the... Well, you're not listening to me
I'm
now.
listening. I am listening.
That's okay. Go
Pharisees
ahead.
and Sadducees.
Keep going. What were you going to say next?
So Paul was good friends and wrote letters to Seneca, who was like a Roman statesman / poet / like playwright, who wrote like plays about these themes, right? This might have been something he talked about with him.
What's the this there?
Like, like pagan classical religion versus Christianity / Judaism. Right?
Okay.
Anyway.
All right. Well, thank you, Brian. Good description. Great summary.
I tried not to give away too many plot points.
You did a great job.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
But wait.
Oh.
But in the movie, Odysseus is Matt Damon, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Penelope is what's her name? Princess Diaries.
I thought it was Lupita
Anne
Nyong'o.
Hathaway.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
No,
who
Lupita
was.
Nyong'o is Helen of Troy.
Oh, okay.
And so, like, a lot of the MAGA types have their panties in a
I've been
bunch
upset about
because,
that.
well, Helen of Troy, a mythological figure, was not black. It's like, oh, well, Santa Claus is not black. People that get mad about that.
And I really feel like Christopher Nolan did that on purpose for that particular reaction, and that feels like irresponsible to me.
Well,
but
yeah.
whatever. It feels like it's like I'm tired of white people using Lupita Nyong'o as some type of tokenist casting stunt. I mean, I think she's gorgeous. She knows she's gorgeous. I think she's a great actress, but I'm starting to feel like it's enough already. Like, you're not proving anything by casting her in some what you think is controversial role.
I mean, the other thing, though, is that even back in the Bronze Age, in the Mediterranean, this was like where Europe, Asia, and Africa met. People would see people of all different races.
That's fine, that's not the point. Do you know what I'm like? It would be different. It doesn't meet me. Yeah. It doesn't meet my spirit. It doesn't meet my ears as a natural choice. It meets my ears and it meets my spirit as an exploitative move.
Yeah.
As an exploitative move. It doesn't meet me the way hearing about the casting in One Battle After Another.
Yeah.
Why are you making that face?
No, I'm listening.
Oh, hearing the casting in One Battle, that sounded like sincere casting. You have Regina Taylor. You've got whoever else. You've got a newcomer. Say what you want to say.
No, I'm listening. I'm listening to what you're saying.
Go ahead. Say what you were thinking of.
Well, the other one that got a lot of criticism is they casted Elliot, formerly Ellen Page, as one of the Greek soldiers. Now, prior to when the movie came out, the rumors was it is Achilles, who was, like I said, Achilles was supposed to be like the greatest Greek warrior, and so the macho types really were pissed then, and but even after, we have a trans person as a Greek soldier, and I guess you could look at that as stunt casting too,
but again, I can't, and it is irresponsible. In this day and age, it's irresponsible when a bunch of white people are exceptionally obsessed over Roman and Greek this and preserving whatever some of these notions were of manhood, masculinity, authoritarianism, bulliness, whatever. Like, to me, it was done explicitly to rile one group of people.
Well, I mean, I can see that. On the other hand,
you already given me the other hand, but go ahead.
Here's another other hand. So, classical mythology and history suffers from a lot of the same kind of Eurocentrism that biblical scholarship does. Like, the people that were like, well, Jesus was white. Well, the Greeks they're pretty white, but in the South, they were pretty swarthy, and the people in Turkey, they would have looked like what we think of as Turks looking today. So they might have been like Arabs, whatever.
Right.
But they're casting all of these white actors in these roles too.
Right. So again, all I'm saying is that the commentary that's being echoed in this conversation to me is distracted because it to me wasn't done in good faith. if you want to look at things done in good faith, look at Chosen. To me, that was literally cast in good faith. I think they did a very concerted effort in how they chose people, how they cast people, how they represented certain things, what they made current, what they made this, what they made that. Like, because we do have more evidence of how people might have looked and the range that they might have said. So I hear about the casting decisions in the Odyssey, and I hear, oh, okay, and that's more for me to prepare to be annoyed for that and to let that go and to watch the story, because I'm just hearing too much about the story. So there are a whole lot of devil's advocate positions to be, according to, I mean, against what I'm saying to be said, and I'm sure that 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 they're out there. But I am a black person in this outdoor room saying that while I'm not out here writing about how Lupita Nyong'o didn't have any right to be whatever. I'm not going to say that, or that Elliot, formerly Ellen Page, doesn't have any right to do blank thing. I am saying, and Christopher Nolan, I think that decision to do so, I don't know if it was weighed entirely in good faith entirely in good faith. That's all. I mean, but sometimes people want that stunt, want that, and that might have also been a concession that he made for some producer who knew that it was going to be a part of what gave it buzz. Could be a lot of things.
What do you, shifting gears a little bit, what is your take on something like Bridgerton then?
I don't watch Bridgerton, and I think that Bridgerton is romance and fiction, and it's not based on it's not a redo of anything that we've committed to memory, even if it's a time period that people have imagined. I think it's similar to Barbies. When I saw the Barbie movie, it was really interesting to both come face to face with the Barbie world as I engaged with it as a kid, but to also be like, oh gosh, there's way too much, not too much, there was maximalist ethnic diversity and variation that it didn't distract me, but it was noticeable. So I think for Bridgerton, I get the sense that it's really pretty television. Like, it just looks pretty. It looks very pastel. It looks very smooth. It looks like it's fantasy, but also sophisticated. The accents have that. I have an accent from somewhere.
Yes.
I like that. Like that, it does this thing that reading a romance novel kind of does when you're in your head, and I think it seems to successfully achieve that. So my thoughts are less about, and the non-white faces you see in Bridgerton, they come off so almost colorless. Like, I know that there are dark-skinned people, I know, but they still come off like with some kind of glossy, de-racialized hue to me when I see it, which is different than when I watched Barbie. And I got to look at that. I got to think about that more. So I don't. My thoughts are just, I don't think of it and think, oh gosh, it's so ahistorical.
Well, I mean, the other thing though is, it's like, we know a lot more about the historical period that Bridgerton was set in than we do. I mean, we don't.
Than we do of Troy and stuff like that.
I mean, this is stuff that happened, a couple thousand, 3,000 years ago, right?
Well, in Bridgerton, nobody would have been black. Nobody who's actually in Bridgerton would have been in the positions that they're in Bridgerton, right? Yeah.
But at the same time, like, if you're insisting on trying to make this historic,
but
then
who's insisting on that?
Well, I mean, if you're trying to say this is different, it's like, I feel like Troy the movie,
Troy the movie?
or sorry, not Troy the movie,
Oh.
the Odyssey the movie, as opposed to, or and even the Odyssey the book. Like I said, these were both committed to text hundreds
Yeah.
of years later, and they were like fantastical retellings. Like if there was a Trojan War, you read the Odyssey and the Iliad, and they're like, there's like 50,000 soldiers in ships came to attack this big city. What it probably really was basically like
10?
like a few pirates that laid siege to like a village. That there just weren't that many like what we would consider like a village or a small town now. Like cities just weren't that big back then, right?
Well, and you're an anthropologist, so has there been any tangible evidence of the Trojan War that's ever been discovered?
Like I said, there's this site in Turkey called Hisarlik, which they think was the historic Troy or
Can you spell that?
Ilium.
Historic?
Hissalrik. And it was discovered in the 19th century by a German archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann. And interestingly, like historic Mycenae was discovered around the same time by a British archaeologist named Arthur Evans. But you look at this, and like a lot of these ancient cities in the region, it's a mound, and basically it's like one city built on top of another, on top of another, on top of another, on top of another. And he found a layer that looked like there was a lot of burning. It's like, okay, the city was sacked here. This was Troy. And they found all kinds of cool stuff there. And later on, now archaeologists are like, well, the dates don't really line up with when the Trojan War is thought to have occurred. So this is probably the same place, but the layer we're looking at was probably not Troy. And, the layer that, interestingly, like the layer where they think the dates line up, there's not all this evidence of the city being sacked, but, it's historically a city that has the same name as the city in the Trojan War, or sorry, in the epics. But again, like, can you say that means that the events that happened in the epics actually happened? No, not at all. It's like there's a lot of stuff in the Old Testament where we're like, well, this is where the city, like this is where Babylon was, but we know that there was never really like an actual Tower of Babel, right? Or we have found the remains of it, and it's just, this was just people telling stories in that time period using the places that they knew, or like incorporating something that city, the Babylonians conquered the Jews and dominated them for centuries, right? So like, of course this is the city that they are going to represent as having, like, placing this like sinful legend in, right? Of the Tower of Babylon is the sinful city,
I'm thinking about the oral tradition, oral storytelling tradition, and oratory. Is that the right word? What's oratory?
I mean, oratory is more like giving speeches.
That's so why do I
This is the bardic tradition.
So the bardic, so this is the question then. How does oratory, like the tradition of giving speeches, the Frederick Douglass of it all, differ from the bardic tradition? Because I think of both as being storytelling traditions, or are
the
not
oratory
all...
and rhetoric. I think it comes more from the political and philosophic realms.
Is philosophy the overlap though? Because I think isn't there philosophy in the other one too, or is not, or is that not?
Here's another thing to remember. So when all of this stuff was being written down in classical antiquity, especially in Greece, prior to Rome, but even in Rome, like these were happening in city-states or like one giant metropolitan
I
city.
keep saying, well, I don't. The term city-state just does not register to me as like I don't know what that's supposed to be signaling.
So
to
a
me.
city-state is basically you had one central city and it kind of rules the small area around it, right? And then later on one might become dominant regionally. But it wasn't a single polity like the Roman Empire was, right? Where the Roman Empire was just like, it was an empire and they ruled everyone, right? And everything was surrounded by Rome.
Was it in one geographic space, the Roman Empire?
I mean, the Roman Empire basically was like all of Europe and most of North Africa.
And then there would be a city-state that was sovereign and was in the middle of the Roman Empire.
So the Roman Empire basically swallowed all the city-states, right? So there was the Greek, they swallowed the Macedonian Empire, which was Alexander the Great. But Alexander the Great, basically, he's the one that unified all the city-states, conquered them all, made it one empire.
He unified them
by conquering them, and everything was ruled by one king. Him, Alexander the Great.
And what kingdom or rule was that?
That was the Macedonian. So basically,
Macedonia was before Rome.
It was in between like classical Greece and Rome.
And Troy
was before all of that.
That's before classical Greece.
Yes, a few hundred years before, yeah. But that's after the Bronze Age.
So the Bronze Age, the Iron Age.
Yeah, archaic Greece, yeah, and then
archaic Greece.
Then classical Greece.
Then
the Hellenistic Empire, they call it Macedonia.
Hellenistic Macedonia.
Yeah, and so basically Alexander the Great conquered everyone. Like the entire
and that sets
world
the
known
precedent
to the West
and that sets the precedent for the Roman Empire.
For the massive nation states, right?
Like the Roman Empire.
Yes.
And how has that tradition carried forth into today?
What do you mean?
Like the nation state, the conquering, the unifying for the sake of...
Well, so, the Roman Empire lasted first the Roman Republic, then the Empire in the West lasted 1,000 years.
Yeah.
And then if you count the Byzantine Empire, which was the Eastern Roman Empire, that lasted another 1,000 years. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe it's 1,600 years, so, right? But, so those were the first giant states in Europe. Now there were some larger empires in the Middle East, like Persia and Babylonian, whatever, Assyrian empires. But
why don't we tell all of the empire stories parallel?
But after the Roman Empire kind of broke up in the West, that's you had all of these other groups kind of competing to put it back together, right? And that's where you got these big countries where you got the Holy Roman Empire, and then you
after
have
the Roman Empire,
France and all these others.
After what broke up the West?
Roman Empire
broke up.
But that was the beginning of large countries.
After it collapsed.
Yeah, large independent countries in Europe. Prior to that, there weren't any, except for Rome.
Oh, that's the guy. That's the kid.
So, what was I trying to say? But anyway, the idea of the city-state, right? So it's like I said, in Greece or the Greek-speaking world, you had these, it would be a big city like Athens or Sparta or Corinth and there's some other ones, and they were all kind of trying to be the dominant power, but they all had their own kings, right? It's kind of more like what you'd see in feudal Europe, right? England used to be 7 or 8 different kingdoms, right?
Okay, we're losing the audio on here too.
Okay.
Got it. Thank you.
But what I was going to say, just with respect to that, was that within each of these communities, these weren't huge places. All the people knew each other. All the educated, the citizens, knew each other.
Why do you think citizens, as opposed to what, slaves? As opposed to what?
Slaves or helots, which are kind of like a serf,
helots?
Helot.
Okay.
Or just common people, right?
Wait, common people are different from citizens?
Well, yes.
How?
It depended on the city-state.
Okay, give me whatever standardized version you're saying. So you're answering this question with a level of complexity that I'm not asking
Let's talk about Athens,
so
right?
let's just Can we not, babe?
Yeah.
Can you just tell me what the difference is? Just answer the
I can't
question.
just. That's the problem.
Okay, well then don't
Yeah.
worry about it. I'll look it up. It's fine. Thank you. Thank you. Because sometimes one is asking, and I understand. I understand wanting to tell it the right way, but sometimes one can practice answering the simple version of the question and then even going to do the more after that.
Let's just say they vote, they have property, they're men, and they serve in the army.
Okay, that's
the
perfect.
that's the citizens.
That's the citizens. So if they're not men,
Common people basically just farmed.
okay, and it was decided by gender primarily. That if they're looking at the first entry point, gender was the first thing.
Yeah, I mean it was always men.
Okay.
But even so, like, some of them more people were citizens than others, but
And then property.
But like in Athens, when you had government was literally all of the citizens came together and voted. Like they came to like one place.
Right. I never considered though that
And then they just voted.
that there were common people
That was democracy.
who weren't considered citizens in a democracy. I'm aware of the idea of I won't say a citizen or a slave because I had never really even considered just that distinction.
Yeah.
But for you to talk about times as before times where we are right now, and for you to say something delineating the difference between citizens and common people, that is just a visualization, that I had not considered. I hadn't considered. It's a classification I just hadn't considered.
Yeah.
And it goes into our conversations about the hero, the villain, the townspeople, and it helps me understand why citizenry decisions in this country are so difficult, because I'm not going to articulate this correctly right now in a historical sense, but I'm understanding that we truly haven't decided or wrestled with what's the difference between a common person and an American citizen. And does being a common person who is born in this country make you a citizen? Does being a common person who and really identifying that.
Well, the interesting thing is that the U.S. is modeled much more after Rome than it is after Greece, right? We say democracy, and we were usually more talking about Rome, but even Rome, like they had like citizens, but they also had elite classes. So they had like the senatorial class, and those were really the only people that could be politicians. So they had like a political elite class. And then they had the equestrians, the knights, who were the military elites, and like you had to be born into that. And then you had the regular citizens. Then you had the freedmen, who were like ex-slaves. And then you had the slaves.
In Rome?
In Rome.
In Rome, you had freedmen?
Yeah.
We didn't make that up in America?
No. That is a concept we got from Rome.
Shut up! Are you serious?
Although, the system of slavery was very different there, though, than, it was not race slavery.
I know.
But, like, a lot of, like, the merchant
I didn't
class,
know we got the, okay.
They would, like, buy their, you would buy your freedom, or you'd be manumitted, which means, you'd be granted your freedom by your
And being granted
owners,
your freedom, did you automatically get your citizenship, or what did you need to do then
you
for
were
citizenship?
a different class. You were a freedman. You were not, like, a full citizen. And, the Roman Empire lasted hundreds of years, so there were, like, at certain points in time,
these things weren't written down.
Like, you could become a citizen or you couldn't,
And they didn't. These things weren't written down. They
No,
were written down into rule.
So Rome, like, they talk about ancient Greece and ancient Rome, and they're like, ancient Greece, they were the thinkers. Ancient Rome, they were the administrators, right? They were the bureaucrats. Like, they were great at record keeping. They were great at, like, administrating large systems and building stuff.
We're bad at that. We're good at being thinkers, though. Or do you think we're good at that?
I don't think we're good at either anymore.
Well, I guess that's true. But you were saying that we think we model ourselves after Rome, but we really modeled
No,
ourselves
we
more.
think we model ourselves after Greece because we say democracy, but yeah, like the democracy in Greece, like I said, was just like all the citizens getting together in the marketplace and having and literally like raising their hand.
And
like,
everybody's a citizen in Greece, or more people are citizens in Greece than they are in Rome. In that context,
it wasn't representative, is what it was. It was literally like direct democracy, right?
In Greece, it wasn't representative, or in Rome, it wasn't representative.
In Rome, it was they had a senate. They had like governors. They had like all this stuff. Greece, it was just like
you yourself voted.
It was just like you had the leader or the king or whatever, and then you just had the citizens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I still am not getting as straightforwardly what I think you're saying, but let's move on.
You don't vote for people to vote for you. It's just literally you're voting.
I understand, but you're telling me that that's the case in Greece.
In Greece, yeah.
But you're also telling me it's the leader and its citizens. And what I'm asking you is, you're also saying that it's the citizens and Rome, but you're telling me that it's not actually the citizens, it's representative. So I guess I just don't understand. Isn't the leader the representative? And I just don't. Are you saying only the representatives vote in Rome, or why are you saying it's? I just don't see what you're making the distinction.
In Rome, you vote for your senator, and then your senator does the business of doing the votes in the Senate and running the government.
Yes.
In Greece, it's like no. There's no senators.
I understand. So you vote for the rules?
You go. It's like a town hall. Like everything's a town hall.
So when you say everything, you mean
that's
any
how the government's run.
Any governing that needs to happens on a voting basis, item per item, and everybody comes to the square and votes on it.
Yeah.
And does that happen at what period? Like how
it's
is
like
that
classical
staggered?
Greece, but that's only really possible to do that in a small community. Yeah.
And how often? Like, are you doing it once a year for like everything? Or are you doing it once a month for like however many things per month? Like, how often are you convening to all vote on the things?
It depends.
If I was curious, if I wanted to ask these questions so that I'm better able to articulate what I'm actually trying to figure out, what would be some keyword search terms that you would recommend me looking into?
That's not the way I think.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Okay.
I don't know. Athenian democracy.
Okay.
Government. And, the other thing is, like I said, it varied from city-state to city-state. Like Sparta, the other main one that we hear about, there's Athens versus Sparta. Sparta was like a military dictatorship.
So what would you say?
With a very few citizens, and almost everyone was slaves.
Now, if you were speaking to a room full of 19-year-olds, who presumably have gone through English, maybe they're freshmen in college, is this how you would speak to them? Like, would you speak to them with this type of historical shorthand? Like, how would you make up the difference in a room full of people who truly have no idea what you're talking about or don't even know how to ask? Just out of curiosity, if I wanted to talk to someone about how to...
Are we talking college or high school?
I'm saying 19-year-old.
So college.
Maybe, but that doesn't mean that they're going to college or in college.
Okay, so I was like 19 years old when I learned this
I
stuff,
understand,
right?
babe.
So I think to a college audience, you talk about it in all its complexity, even if it's intro, because people get doctorates in this stuff. This is an incredibly deep
so when
and
you say things
topic.
like city-states over and over, or nation-states, do you expect the 19-year-old would you expect every 19-year-old to know what that meant? Would you expect Kylie to know what that meant?
Yes.
You would expect to be able to say that offhandedly and her be very clear about what that meant. And you would feel confident stopping yourself and saying, now tell me what city-state means before I go on.
Even if I didn't, someone like Kylie, a young woman going to college, I'd expect to be able to fill in the blanks using her own, research.
Sure. And if she was in conversation with you, you believe that she'd be able to follow what you're saying.
Yeah. She's smart.
I think no, she's very smart.
Yeah.
It's not about whether or not she's smart, and it's not about it's about.
I'd expect her to ask, why was the city?
Well, and I think that that's what I'm getting at, and I'm going to say this to the camera. What I'm getting at is that we've got to be a lot more accountable to ourselves about what we take for granted that kids know and don't know, even the smart ones we know. I was reminded yesterday how ill-equipped even the smartest young people are for keeping up in foreign conversations, like things about which they know nothing. Life is a series of being thrown into unknown events, unknown topics, and unknown territories. We have, whether we know it or not, we have really what some people call coddled the American mind, especially in people, I would say 35 down, but definitely 25 down, to just consume information, consume words, and have not stopped ourselves a lot along the way to clarify that we're all on the same page. And I'm always thinking about who we're representative of, and I know that you are representative of other smart people like you, who
educated.
Well, yes, educated people. Yes, educated.
Which are two different
people.
things.
Well, yeah. So right, educated people. But even I'm educated too. But I'm also, I don't speak I don't speak in that way, and I believe I'm smart too. But I also, I don't know if I'm articulating what I mean yet. As I'm listening, I'm hearing so many words that signal things, but that still aren't clarifying in terms of what they mean. And that's really all. I was just wondering, like, if I'm feeling that way, how might someone else who listening?
I mean, it's interesting because I think that. I'm thinking a couple things here. So first, I think that is a skill that I won't say it's been completely lost, but it's atrophied in our culture and in our educational system. I think like 30 years ago, I'm talking about these things, and you're a 19-year-old, and you maybe get the gist of what I'm talking about, but you don't understand it. After I'm done talking, you go to the Encyclopedia Britannica, right?
You go to the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Well, this is what we were taught in school, though, right?
Not everybody did what they were taught in school. But
yes,
I'm listening.
Okay.
I gotcha. I understand.
And you look it up, and you learn something about it, and then maybe you look at what the sources were, and then you go to those, and so forth. And I think a part of the big, I think a big part of the learning process was going to the secondary sources. One of the things I fear with like AI is it's just like AI spits out an answer and you're like, okay, that's the answer. And you miss out on the deep dive process. Now the other thing with this topic in particular is that in Western education 100 years ago, these were things. What we're specifically talking about were things that everyone was assumed to know because it was like the basis of a classical education. When you go to school and people would learn Latin.
And therein lies my point. There. Right there. You speak like all of the liberal puppetry believed that we were all being taught to speak and do. My mom probably believes that I should know the same things and speak the same way that you do because my mom invested in us having encyclopedias at home. I had all of but be clear, there are still character and motivation traits inherent and even picking up Just because you don't pick up the Encyclopedia Britannica doesn't mean you're not curious
No.
or want to find a source. There is, those things were
Of course.
presented to you and they look a certain way, and the way that they look is daunting and intimidating.
Well-
and the way that the words sound is also daunting
Well-
and intimidating.
You know, you and I were born in a particular historical moment that was kind of in between. Like even our parents' generation would be way more steeped in this kind of old model, right? Of education, thinking, and even like the subjects that you were learning. The people that come after us are like way less, probably even more separated from where we are now than we are from where our parents are, just because they grew up in a kind of post-internet educational model. So, you know, people born at different times speak different languages.
And which is a great place to actually wrap, because if we got here from the Odyssey, and the Odyssey, the book, was handed down to us in oral tradition, right, originally, I think about where we are in the country, midlife in America 250, and how, and the cultural inheritance moment that I believe that we're in, that we have 3 living generations now, if not 4, because I am going to count boomers, but I know that we have 3 young living generations in generations X, Y, and Z, with the capacity and, I believe, cognitive capability to summon the rhetoric, the traditions, the stories, the things that we want to recite, repeat, to memorize, to teach, and to share, because we need to at least document the gaps between them, between us, document the gaps like that we have between our parents, and maybe that our parents had between whatever, because we have a historical memory about the founding. Like, really, I don't know how much of that historical memory can be carried down if there's not more that we capture outside of just the documents and the institutions themselves.
The other thing is there's the limitations of human memory too. So even within a lifetime, it's like, I think about, we were talking about Paul, and it's like, I learned all this shit in Sunday school, and even some of that, like, my memory is a little hazy.
Of course.
And you know, unless it's continually being refreshed,
yes,
it stops being kind of part of like the shared understanding of people. And like, even like 100 years ago, I was talking about, you know, everyone would know this classical stuff. They'd also know the Bible. And it's like, just because everyone was reading and talking about the Bible at the time, right? And, you know, it's funny because...
And talking about it with curiosity and not with,
It's funny because, like, when I was in college, right? Everyone I knew.
I forgot we had booze in our coffee. I'm tired.
Males, females, white, black, everyone knew Star Wars, right? And so you could, like, refer to something, at least in a general way, to Star Wars, and everyone would know what you were talking about. You know, and of course, back then, Star Wars was just 3 films that everyone had seen, right?
Oh, right. You're right. Now it's like 100 films. Yeah.
And it's like, now you have, like, Star Wars geeks that talk about all this, like, crazy arcane shit, and then you have people that just don't even know.
Okay, it's fine. Yeah, it was. I don't know.
And then you have, like, a lot of young people that are just like, Star Wars. I don't know. I don't have clue one about Star Wars. Like, you know, so that was, you know, kind of a shared cultural work that ended up being weirdly ephemeral in a way, right?
And remind us what the word ephemeral means.
Fleeting, right? Or, you know, there was a period of time where, like, lots of people were making references to, like, The Simpsons. You know, this is stuff that's going, because no one reads all the same books anymore. No one even watches the same TV shows and movies anymore, or listens to the same, like, there's top 40. Like, even music has become so fragmented that you ask me, I probably couldn't name any top 10 hits of the past 15 years. Or know that they were a number one. It's like, oh, I heard that song. It's familiar, but, no one, it's just not shared across the board like it used to be. It's funny because, like, I look at your little TV chat group, right? And you have to curate that you're all watching the same TV shows.
Who? When do we do that?
You and your... It's not done explicitly, but it's just like...
Oh, but
like,
we don't even really...
you're
Yes,
like,
you're
these
right.
These are the shows we're
yes,
watching.
Right.
It gives,
like, go to such
and
such.
we do it because it gives us something to talk about.
Oh, right, the content.
And I'm here as an outsider, like, I have no fucking clue what's going on in the Kardashians or whatever,
Right.
you know?
And that's interesting. That's how you see the TV talk group chat. Yes, because that is kind of how it started, and we do still share that. You're right. Yeah.
But there's nothing that is, like, just assumed to be shared by anyone anymore. It's like you literally have to curate it in order to be able to have the conversation.
Yes, you do. And I don't find that to be... I think that that's a labor of love, and it should also be rewarded in the same way that it was rewarded then. Because I think of creating a universe for the survivability of the Odyssey is curating shared content. It's building a group of I think of that as a similar task.
I mean, I think stuff like the Odyssey and the Bible will stick around because it has kind of like the first mover advantage, you know?
So what's the first mover advantage of today?
Who even knows? But, like, you will see... It's funny because you see movies that are remade over and over, and it's stuff from, like, the early days of movies where there weren't a lot of movies, you know?
Yeah.
But, who's going to remake...
Adventures in Babysitting? I would.
I mean, maybe... Like, maybe there's some nostalgia for, like, people who are in charge now from stuff when they were kids. But, you were talking... What's that movie? One Thing After Another, or whatever.
One Battle After
One
Another.
Battle After Another.
I haven't seen it. I still haven't seen that, though.
I will go on the record now that will say that will probably never be remade.
I agree.
Just because it was made at a time where it is so swamped by everything that it's just not going to be, it's not going to stand out.
Yeah.
Enough,
unless somebody just really, really loves it and they're taking it with them for the rest of their life. Like, so for example, Imitation of Life. That is a movie that I love like nobody's business. But that's also a movie that if my love for it was so deep that I wanted to make sure that it was survivable, I could commit the next, if I'm in third quarter life, third quarter, fourth quarter, to wanting to preserve the integrity, the enthusiasm or something for that movie so that someone would remake it. The thing is, to me, all of these things are obviously, they're esoteric questions, but the powerful takeaway for me is still everything comes down to what?
No, I'm listening.
Everything comes down to one person being down. Like, cause it must have started with one person who memorized the Odyssey and recited it, and they were getting all of the bounty for doing it, and someone wanted to make it a more competitive market, and then it became a thing that more than one person did, and more than two people did, and more than three people did. It became you can call it a racket, you can call it whatever you want to do. Things become competitive because people see that they work.
This is a whole other very deep conversation, but I don't think you can talk about stuff that happened back then in terms of the market, just because like social dynamics were so different.
Just different. That's fair. That's fair.
But I took a whole graduate level course on economic anthropology, so like,
That's right. So that means that he knows more about that than I
No.
do, and you can't talk about it.
Not that I
way.
don't think more about that, but I can just really get into
No, I didn't
the
say
weeds
think more about it,
or
but
know
because
more
he
about it. I
took a
just can
course
get
in
really
it, that
the
means
weeds.
that, yeah, you get really in the weeds and things that were taught to you, not in things that you're curious about that haven't been stated. I get into the weeds about things that
I don't think
haven't
that's
been
true.
personally expressed, haven't been expressed, or aren't being explicitly taught, and wondering about the possibilities. We go in the weeds in different directions. But what were you going to say earlier? You had that look on your face like you were going to say something.
I don't remember.
Hmm?
I don't remember.
Okay, all right. Thank you for sharing your brain with us and all of your advanced and astute knowledge. We appreciate you for bringing your Jeopardy abilities to the channel.
I think they're more than Jeopardy abilities. Jeopardy is just factoids
I mean, this is facts. You share facts.
and analysis.
Yes, it's synthesized facts.
Okay.
Yeah, what's wrong with that? I'm for real. What's wrong with that? Huh? Oh, okay.
I just like to
Fact-
think it's just more than facts.
But facts are hard to remember. Like, synthesizing facts is really difficult. Like, you have to hold all of the facts at the same time. And I mean, that's what you hold things up against what's established to be true. So, I mean, that's very difficult to do. You have to hold a lot of facts in order to do that. And it can be very intimidating. I personally am not intimidated by it, but it can be very intimidating. So I thank you. Yeah. I thank you, for real. I do. I thank you. It's a very impressive gift that you share with us. And so now I want to see the Odyssey. Do I want to see it though?
I think you should see it, then you should read it.
Hell no.
There's some good translations. That are
I'm
very
sure
breezy.
there are some good translations, but third quarter life and everything is about
You wanna read a
ROI
book?
trading, and I'm happy to read a book, but that is, if I'm just getting into a 600-page book, I'd rather commit to reading the Bible.
You haven't read the Bible?
I haven't read the whole thing cover to cover.
You
No.
haven't?
Mm-mm. No, I haven't
That's
read it cover to
surprising
cover.
to me.
No, gosh,
You're
I'm
such
not.
a Bible-oriented person.
I've never read it like from the beginning to the end. No, I've thought about doing those Bible in 1 year things. I probably, I've aspired to do it. Maybe I will. I'm assuming you have, cover to cover. You probably have memorized the whole
I
thing
haven't
too.
memorized, no.
Yeah.
I read a bunch of the New Testament in
Mhm.
Greek even.
I
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Back when I still
That's
understand
impressive.
ancient Greek. When
That's
I was
impressive.
30 years ago when I was studying classics.
Well, and I think that the difference between the two of us is that you see the Bible as, and I appreciate it as
a work of
literature.
literature.
Yeah, and I appreciate it as literature for sure. And I get this from history too. I think I'm into a lot of things for the revelation in them, and not necessarily for the recitation in them, I guess. I even think the Bible is a recited text put to
Really?
words too, isn't it?
The Old Testament.
Yeah, the Old Testament.
Yeah, the
Mhm.
New Testament
The New Testament was written.
written.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about the New Testament, we're talking about people kind of reinterpreting these things in different ways. It's like you think about, so many people think about the King James version and like the thous and these and this like regal kind of thing, and you do read the New Testament in Greek, and it's like super breezy in style, and it's written to be like very earthy and understood by the common person, and Jesus talks like very simply and straightforwardly, and it's just like it's got a completely different tone to what we think of it when we read like a lot of the most common translations in English.
You're talking about the New Testament?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know Hebrew or Aramaic, so I've never read like the. I mean, I've read it in Latin, which again, you look like the Vulgate, which is like the main kind of Latin version that they use in Catholic, and Vulgate literally means like of the people, and for Latin, it's written very like breezily and simply too. But again, it's a translation, so I couldn't tell you like what kind of the tone would be in Hebrew. I don't know Hebrew. Any.
So are you going to learn Hebrew?
God no, too old for that.
Okay.
If I had been raised Jewish, maybe like in Hebrew school, I would have picked up enough to read stuff. But
Okay.